Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. I appreciate that. My name is Curkovic. I'm a professor in the supply chain program. I've been here 22 years now. It's been a phenomenal ride. Enrollment's at a record high. Demand continues to exceed supply. We keep building new skill sets into the program because industry demands it. Lately, the big one has been technology, so we created the business analytics minor. Now we have employers telling us leadership and problem-solving skills are right up there. So in response to all of that, we try to develop into the curriculum tools that students can learn from to develop these skill sets. My role in the supply chain program is I teach our intro supply chain management class. Typically, that'll be the first class that our students take, very lecture-driven, take tests. And then I get the students in our project class about halfway through the curriculum, and we basically hand the students a project and help them with the tools they need to solve a problem in the real world, actually help managers solve a supply chain problem. This section this semester has been fantastic because I've basically done nothing, because I haven't needed to, because we've teamed up with a local company that has done most of the work for me. The managers were that engaged, and the students took the initiative. They saw this for the opportunity that it was. We basically handed them a professional work experience, and they ran with it, and they turned it into a glorified internship, if you will, because they got the same experience that they typically would with a full-time internship. So when it's all said and done, they've got something to talk about, something to put on the resume, and they walk away with a lot of the skills that employers are demanding from us. And back to what I said earlier, a big part of this semester was a local company teaming up with us and basically running with this and helping us with our students. And that local company was a family-owned business by the name of Clark Logic. And what I'd like to do now is hand it over to the lead manager that helped us run with this, and that is Greg Delon, that will introduce himself and carry us forward. Thanks, Greg.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to the students. Thank you to Western Michigan and Professor here for an amazing program this semester. There's a lot of hard work went into this, and timing and resources from our company to figure out how we could really find them the right programs to work in and find the right experience that they'd be able to leave feeling good about. We are a family-owned company. We've been in business for 50 years. The owner of the company, Charles E. Clark, he was a Western Michigan graduate student from the marketing program here, and his passion and tasked me with earlier this year is really developing a program of some kind that we could work in conjunction with Western Michigan University. Last semester we tried to pilot out, and it worked really well. So came back here and expanded that a little bit this semester, working with the DMAIC program and also some 5S pieces. And I think we had a pretty super turnout and super impressed at the student body and the education that they were receiving here, and happy to let them talk. So I'm going to pass this off. We had one major person here that was outside of us being the corporate champion for this is Jared Jones, and he was an all-star this semester. Tried to give him more than he could chew on, and he did a great job, so here you are.
Thank you. Hi, so my name is Jared Jones. I'm actually a first-generation college student. I was actually in these guys' shoes last spring. I was a Six Sigma student as well. I was in Professor Tom Kelly's class. And I was actually presented the opportunity to be an intern at Clark Logic by Greg and Jamie. They presented the opportunity to me to be able to be an intern over the summer of 2019. And with the following semester of this fall, I was able to take over this Six Sigma supply chain class for Dr. Curkovic, and I will always be grateful for that experience. This experience made me mature and grow as not only a student, but helped me mold into a professional as I'm nearing the end of my educational experience. This experience really gave me the insight to what is going to be going on in the real world sense, and being able to manage and create relationships with, I guess you could say, employees, interns in this case, but create relationships and really feel the full experience of being a successful manager, I guess you could say. So the students, they worked on some projects for our company. The projects were dunnage wash station. That is where you have your auto manufacturers have dunnage totes, and with that, it comes with sustainability and decreasing your logistics costs. The next group that will be presenting is data integrity. Those guys, they took over our distribution center at Three Rivers. It's called Team Manufacturing. They took over that and basically did a warehouse map and figured out what's going to be the best feasible place and product placements for our stuff inside of our distribution center. And then we have inflow implementation. Those guys, they took over our shim and side shim placements. Shims and side shims, those are basically what you would use for axles. When there's spacing in between the axles, sometimes you need very precise and very, very, very precise machining on these types of shims that are going to go inside these axles to create spacements so that metal isn't rubbing on metal and stuff like that. And then lastly, we have our trailer detention guys. These guys did asset management for our JNL Express. They went out and found creative ways to do remote yard checks so that our guys aren't going to have to go out to these to our customers and go out in the yard and figure out where our assets are at. They actually went through 2 programs, FleetTilla and LowTrek, and figured out where our assets are at, geofenced, and really helped us out on regaining some of our lost revenues that our customers are taking advantage of by us not doing our yard checks on a day-to-day basis. Really helped us out in the long run by being able to fully utilize this software in ways that it wasn't being utilized before. And lastly, as you guys all may know, there was a very lengthy GM strike. So Team Manufacturing is a tier 2 distribution center for GM. So it was really a different thing to encounter something like that because strikes don't happen monthly or even on a yearly basis. So it was definitely a very real-world experience for me, myself, on having to implement like change management and stuff like that to be able to have projects and have stuff to do for these students that is going to be long-lasting and that they can carry on to their next job or internships and stuff like that. And that is what I tried gearing this program around, was on general on-the-job training. By general on-the-job training, you're able to carry this type of learnings and teachings onto the next job and be able to go to these next jobs and learn specific on-the-job training from these companies that these young individuals are going to work for. With general on-the-job training, by being able to carry this over to your other companies and stuff like that, you will be able to go into these companies and already have the knowledge and experience that these companies are looking for, and will be able to excel these students just one step further than the rest of the ISM grads in this program. Because once you get to these companies, they're not reteaching you stuff that you already know. They're teaching you specific job training so that you'll be able to excel in these specific positions so that you can move up the ranks vertically instead of horizontally, which general on-the-job training could give you. And with that, we're going to start off the presentations with our Dunnage group.
Awesome. Hello. How is everyone doing? Awesome. Awesome. I'm Emily,
I'm Connor.
and we're the Dunnage group. So I want to start off by asking a question. How many of you guys know what Dunnage is? Awesome. Okay, so just for a refresher, if you didn't know, dunnage is a material used to load and secure cargo during transportation or storage. So that kind of gives you a little bit of a visual representation of what we were kind of dealing with. And now we're going to continue.
So what we're going to go over today is what we went through for the semester. We're going to start with our team.
Us.
Yeah, us two. The backstory of the project, the daily operations, what processes improvements we had to make to increase efficiency throughout the procedures for dunnage, our 5S case study, then we're going to going to conclude, show you guys some pictures, thoughts and insights, say thanks to those who helped us along the way.
So our governance. So obviously you have Connor and I, and then ahead of us is Jared. So Jared was our main contact of point, and we would text him, call him, we would ask our primary questions to Jared, and he was always there. He set the deliverable dates for us and the hardcore numbers, and he helped a lot with just the brain power and the process and how to get started. And then Greg was kind of like the back end of the project and helped us kind of move the whole building around the dunnage building. And he was kind of like the insight into Clark Logic, and he helped with moving the building around and also some of our final deliverables and giving us a good starting point on where to start for our project.
So backstory of the dunnage wash station, they're located in Three Rivers, Michigan. Typically have 6 to 7 workers a day. Throughout the semester we noticed because of the GM strike, there was some days they only had 3 or 4 just because of low quantity. Most of the days, the supervisor and then maybe a few others would come in around 5 a.m. They would get things going, get people sorted and assigned to their stations, and then the rest would filter in around 6:30, and then leaving no later than 2:30 once the shop was cleaned up.
So daily operations. So why is dunnage building important in supply chain? So like Jared mentioned, that supply chain is majority of the manufacturers, and the dunnage wash station washes the totes for the automotive industry. So this is crucial because if the dunnage wash station didn't wash the totes, that they would not get cleaned for the auto manufacturers, and then they'd be putting clean parts into dirty tubs, which could be a liability down the road for the machines, for cars, for whatever they're making. And so supply chain wise, the dunnage wash station is really important, and the cleaning of the bins is the literal circle of how things work and a crucial part of that process.
Another thing about the dunnage operations, it was one of the biggest mentions of going green in the business world, because they used to use just one-time throwaway containers and totes, which oftentimes probably didn't get recycled like they should be. So they came up with an idea to start using plastic totes that they could reuse and rewash, and it saved them money on buying throwaway totes, and it helps the environment, which is also a plus. So the daily procedure for dunnage, like I said before, show up in the morning. First things first is check the inbound list and see what's in the truck. The supervisor would then assign employees to specific stations throughout the day. So to start the morning, they would unload the truck, and while one person's on the forklift unloading, another 3 or 4 employees would start sorting in the staging area of the dunnage building. After they get them sorted and stacked by the customers for the outbound at the end of the day, they would start delabeling. That's just to take off the old stickers on the dunnage. After we delabeled, they would either hand wash or machine wash the totes and restack them to be saran wrapped and shipped back out.
All right, so the inefficiencies. So dunnage wash station was working, but not as efficiently and effectively as possible. So it was getting the job done, and the workers were doing the work that was needed for the day, but there was a couple things that could have been easily prevented and done a little bit more efficiently. So we went in and we restructured a few things. We added some accountability, and then we added daily procedures for operations. So anyone could come in and say, hey, I'm here to work for you for the day. What do I do? And you could hand them a packet and say, here's your step-by-step instructions, how to do your job, and that they would know exactly what to do for each step of the process.
So our project was a 5S method, and this contains sort, set in order, shine, standardize, and sustain, which we'll go over.
All right, so first is the sorting. So like Connor mentioned that there was one of the first steps of the day was that they sort, and the only thing that they kind of sorted by was their shipping list. So their shipping list is what they put in the truck, in what order. So they put in like A, B, C, D, E, in the truck, and so we decided that it would be efficient for us to sort, wash, and then do all of those steps based on that order, because that's how you load the truck. So that's how we decided to sort, and the sorting order makes a huge difference because it's a crucial part of the whole process, and if you're doing one section before the other, then the whole thing can get messed up. So sorting is like really important in order for people to operate effectively. So that's the first step of the day, and the lines will be based off of customers, and then their direction lines will be based off of the shipping order, like I said.
In order, this step is just collecting and straightening all of the totes to see what we have coming off of the truck. When we know what we have and how much we have, we can start moving into the delabeling and washing. Process starts with the supervisor. Like I said, he assigns personnel to stations. And we are sorted them by, so the first thing that gets sorted and washed is going to be the first thing that's loaded onto the truck, because in theory that's going to be the last thing that gets delivered at the end of the day. So like Emily said, we thought it'd be better to sort them in the order that they would be shipped, so that way they only have to handle them one time onto the truck, and they don't have to leave them in the middle of the building and just take up space.
All right, so Shine. Here's a beautiful map of the customers. It's just a little visual of what we're talking about and how there's be lines based on the customers. So the Shine method is a lot of labeling and making sure everything is overseen by supervisors and proper areas are marked with proper labels. So as of right now, customers 1 through 6 are labeled, and there are lots of other things that on this picture that you can see that are labeled, and one of them being like an inventory area where we have inventory. So say a pallet comes in with only 10 totes, and that's not enough to fill a pallet to ship it back out. So you'd put it in inventory, you'd label it properly, and you'd wait for more totes to come in order to fill a pallet to send it back out. So through that, we labeled areas with proper pictures and signs. Here's a good picture of the label and how every time they remove labels, that's the picture, or the label would be obviously placed there. And then they'd move and organize if the bins aren't being used.
In order for us to standardize this project, first thing when we went there and just watched for the first day, we didn't really know what was going on that much, but we did notice that it looked like there was not great communication. It looks like some employees were doing stuff different ways. So we decided that we needed to create a standard operating procedures for each step throughout the dunnage wash day. And with these steps, they have accountability boards for the workers. So another thing was that if a shipment is incorrect, there's no way for us to know who or why it was incorrect. So we came up with a accountability board for workers. So this way, after they get the pallets washed and restacked, they can sign off on that pallet. So if that pallet is incorrect when they get to the ship point, we know who did it, and then we can figure out why and what happened, and find a common cause if there happens regularly.
So sustain. Sustain's kind of a hard one for Connor and I because we're not at Clark Logic on a daily basis. So we kind of asked for the help of Jared and Greg for the sustain. Sustain is our final thoughts and make sure everything's running smoothly and continuous steps are being used on a daily basis. So through that, the continuous check on the building. So this is a good example of what Connor just said, that you can walk in and you can say, can you pull the paperwork from last Tuesday? And they'd be like, okay, yeah, sure. You pull the paperwork, you'd be able to see that they followed step-by-step instructions of what they were supposed to do for that day. Also, the sustain process would allow us to pull those accountability sheets to making sure people are signing off on the pallets and making sure they're 100% correct. So the sustain process is really crucial because it affects the overall efficiency of the dunnage building.
To conclude our project, we went in kind of blind, didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. Went in, there wasn't a great procedure for how they're washing their dunnage, and we were able to come up with a more efficient way to go about their processes throughout the day. It took a lot of communication between us and Jared, and then Jared and Greg, and then Greg to his superiors. So it was just a lot of making sure everyone's on the same page. I think that was one of the most difficult things of this project, was finding out the right information from every part. Throughout the semester, we met on a pretty much weekly basis, maybe more every 2 weeks towards the end of the semester. Like the picture we showed earlier, it started off as just a sketch on a whiteboard, and we were there for 4 hours on a Wednesday morning. And it turned out to be pretty accurate of what we thought might be most suited for this building. Then we started finding numbers and calculating times of how long it takes an employee to stack them or wash them.
Or how many times they touch the tote. We counted once that someone touched the tote six times before it hit the trailer. That was,
Yeah, so that was a big thing. Like I said, lots of communication between us and dunnage workers. And here are a few pictures. This is what dunnage actually looks like.
this is a good example of a tote. So the 4x3 is just a tote, and then the 8x1 is a tote with an insert. So any tote can have a insert or a mat in there that they have to clean as well. So a lot of them go through the wash station, but there's some that don't go through the wash station that they just hand wash as of right now. So that's a pretty crucial part, that making sure both of the dunnage and the insert or mat is clean.
This is a picture of the actually wash machine. It has 3 different racks inside of it. One for larger components, one for medium size and inserts, and another one for smaller components. This has to be loaded. Once you start, it has to be 3 seconds between each dunnage, and it's important that you keep spacing between them, or it could mess up the wash process.
So overall, we really enjoyed this project. We're very grateful for the experience. We want to thank Professor Shima for the opportunity. Not a lot of undergrads get to do this at this level in the program, and we're very grateful for that opportunity. And we can take this into the real world, which is just phenomenal. And we can also, it helps us with so many skills like brainstorming, creative abilities. We drew sketches on a whiteboard, which is kind of the first for me. So I think overall, it was a project that was just far more than what I think we imagined.
Yeah. And to close, we just want to give one more thanks. Jared, you were there every day, 24/7 if we needed you. We had a question, you were always there. Really appreciate all your help and just kind of steering us through this project. Greg, you're the guy that makes stuff happen.
Facts.
Like, we had something we want to get done, you're like, all right, it's done. Come back the next day and it was complete. So thank you for having our backs throughout this project. We really appreciate it. And for those that can't be here, the employees at the dunnage building, they were extremely patient and helpful with us. We asked them probably an annoying amount of questions throughout the semester that they answered multiple times, but they were very awesome with us and worked with us and helped us understand what they saw as problems and what they thought could be improved on. And then lastly, thank you, Professor Shima, for this opportunity.
Are there any questions? Yeah, we can do that.
Question?
All right, so that's awesome. Good job. My one question that I'd probably have for everyone in this room is going to obviously gear towards career, right? So how many of you have written a bullet point on your resume from this experience so far? Good. How many bullet points? 4 or 5? Good, good. I just wanted to make sure of that, because so many students lose focus on, hey, this is an opportunity where you're going to be learning things that you need to be able to communicate. And that's one of the most important takeaways that I think you can have as you're going to transition here in the future. So what transferable skills would you say you two took away from this opportunity, and how have you highlighted them to communicate that to employers?
one of them was communication. So obviously we're still students, but we're communicating with people in the real world, in the workforce, that have daily lives that, you know, don't usually have time to do things like this. So I think be able to communicate, especially with Jared. I know Jared's a student and he works. So that's like a huge deal. Connor and I had similar schedules, so that worked out. But it was being able to communicate with the important people and getting the right information at the right time. And I think that was a skill that we all did really well on, is communicating and making sure that, you know, our deliverables were on time and we had the correct information in the right place.
Another thing would be just accountability. There was a lot throughout the semester that, like, we'd have ideas, and all right, we need to get this done. There was days that I couldn't meet or she couldn't meet, and we had to rely on each other. So it was nice to be able to focus and just, all right, I need to get this done for our team, our group, our company. There's oftentimes Greg said, hey, guys, I need this done by tomorrow at 8 a.m. So, okay, obviously busy lives, but you gotta be able to put the priorities straight and just to get them done for the end cause.
That's great. I'm just going to without the microphone. That's really awesome. How do we get beyond the generalizations of able to sit here and feed me verbal? Process improvements that you create. All of these. I'm an HR representative. I might have questions. Would probably be the opportunity. You guys have said that. Now it's time to take the opportunity. Awesome thing.
Thank you.
Oh, I'd also say great job, right? It looks good. I really like it. I was really impressed to see that you engaged the team and pulled the team in. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. So when you met with the team, had communications with the team, what was that like? What were the struggles? How did you get their ideas onto a piece of paper, evaluate those ideas, perhaps rank those ideas, and then put those ideas into play? Because I think that's really important with any improvement, is making sure that you capture the right information, prioritize it, and move them forward. So I'd like to hear a little bit about your success with that.
Are you talking about
I think
our
the Dunnage
team or the
workers.
team at Dunnage?
The team at Dunnage, right? So I think you guys would have great input and you guys could lead that effort, but how did you utilize the knowledge of the team that was doing the work, pull that in, and then execute for something that was better, bigger, more important?
Okay, so some of the first times we met at the Dunnage Wash Building, like I said, we weren't really sure what,
It was very confusing.
so we asked every employee a lot of questions and always ended with if they had any opinions or ideas of what they thought could be improved on. And we
Yeah.
wrote those down, every idea that they said we took note of. And then afterwards, Emily and I met and we went over and said, okay, we think this is possible to change in the near future. And then we just kind of went by what we saw was most fitting and what we could do in our time frame.
And I think even observation, so when we went there, we literally watched them for like 45 minutes because we didn't know what their process was to begin with. And with the process they had, they were touching the tote 6 times before it made it into the trailer. So we were asking them questions like, oh, how many times have you moved this? And they're like, well, we put it in the wrong spot, so we had to move it. And it's like, okay, so how can their answers trigger questions for us to be like, okay, how can we fix that? So I think that's also another thing, was a lot of observation and being compassionate for them. They're doing their job. They're doing something that they've done for a while, and Connor and I kind of came in there and turned the whole place upside down. And so we had to kind of understand their point and their feedback, because that was, you know, being compassionate and saying, hey, we're changing all of this stuff. I know it's a hard concept to understand, so we tried to keep as much of the normality as possible. Did I answer your question?
That did, good job. And then the final thing, yeah. Oh, sorry. The final thing that I'd have is, did you actually do the work too? Did you physically wash a tote, move a tote, stack a tote in the process of making any of the changes?
We touched a few.
Touched a few? All right, okay.
We're told not to get that involved with the actual cleaning
Yeah.
of the totes. So
All right.
We did a lot of observation.
A lot of observation. All right, good, excellent. Good job.
Thank you.
Nice job. I guess part of the question was, I think Emily touched on it a little bit, but when you go into someplace, or maybe when you're changing a process, whether it's working with your coworker or working with your supervisor, any change is hard for people because some people don't like change because it's the unknown. So I guess the question I had was, how did the employees there, did they feel threatened by you when you came, and how did you handle that or communicate to them that you were working in their best interest to make things go smoother for them?
Emily was saying earlier that we took a lot of their ideas and we were trying to be as considerable as we could to them because they're the ones working. And at the end of the day, we're trying to make their jobs easier and more efficient so they don't work as hard. So a lot of their ideas that they had and told us, we were able to incorporate into our 5S plan. And then once we reviewed that with them, kind of explained what we're changing, where this is coming from. Like we're going back to pretty much their ideas, and then we reworked them a little bit. So it was just a compromise between us and the employees. I think everyone's happy how it turned out.
And I think there's a lot of mutual respect. So when we went in there, we were like, we made it very clear, we're not trying to change what you're doing because what we think you're doing is great, but we think that it just needs X, Y, and Z improvements. And then they'd say, yeah, I think you're right. We need accountability in this building. We need a process. If someone comes in, they need to know how to do our job without us sitting there watching them because we have to do our job as well. So I think a lot of that was mutual between.
Yeah, I was looking for the answer of a win-win for both sides.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Since I'm the professor, I got to ask one question, right? I 5S my garage every spring, and I looked at it this morning, and it's a disaster, and I do this every year, which means I'm not really 5Sing it, or I'm not doing it the right way. Are you comfortable moving forward that there's a process in place to make sure that I won't have to have another project to 5S this facility at Clark Logic?
Yes, I think it is possible.
Because what if there's employee turnover? What if Greg goes to a different part of the company or leaves the company? Do you feel like if you visited this facility 2 years from now that what you implemented would still be there?
I think so, yes. It was working with the supervisor of the Dunnage building, Josh. He was very hands-on as well. So he was kind of in our corner and just making relationships with Greg's boss and the higher-ups along with the workers. So I think that the procedures and processes can get passed on easily enough, and they can see the end results are better than they were before we implemented our 5S plan. So I think it's kind of a no-brainer when it comes to they're going to want to do things easier, more efficient throughout the day. So I think
Okay.
And I think if you have 4 workers out there and 2 new ones come in, I think the 4 are going to act more of mentors and help the other 2 and be like, hey, this is what we do. This is our process. And I don't think they would really let anything else change other than, a few things. But it's very simple, very effective, and I think it'll stay the same.
And I know from Clark Logic's standpoint, now that we've seen a change, we start to look at that in our bottom line on our finances, and if that starts to budge again in an opposite direction, we'll be looking at that to go back to the program to see what has been modified from that SOP that was put in place.
Right.
So
It's a good start.
now, once you have those metrics, you can track and counteract those type of situations then reoccurring.
Any other question? Any of you guys? Okay. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
So I'm Logan.
I'm Jack.
And I'm Jared. And for our project, we worked on inflow implementation at Team Manufacturing, which is our Clark Logic company, and is located in Three Rivers, Michigan. So today, first we'll start out by taking you through the backstory of our project. Then we'll take you through the steps of DMAIC, and then we'll conclude with our final photos and our final thoughts on the project.
Okay, so here you can see, make sure it's working. Here you can see that we are below Jared Jones, and it's me, I'm Jack, Jared, and Zach, who is not here. So that's Logan. Zach could not be here today. He's in Florida. So, but yeah, so we go to Jared for mostly everything, and then it goes to Greg above Jared.
So basically, the backstory of a project is centered around the shipments of shims from team manufacturing to their customers. In the past, team manufacturing has struggled with the timeliness as well as accuracy of their shipments, and the whole point of our project was to help team manufacturing improve this process. So to get a better understanding of our project, it is important to understand what a shim is and what a shim does. So a shim is a thin piece of material. This piece of material can be made out of metal, wood, or plastic. And a shim's function is to fill unutilized space. It can also help reduce wear between parts, and it can help parts fit together. At team manufacturing, the type of shim that they store for their customers is the circular metal shim. You can see the pictures on the left of the screen. Well, for you, for the right side. But at team manufacturing, they have many different types of shims. These shims each have different tolerance, and each tolerance has an according part number for that shim. And they store their shims in two different zones. The different zones are the shim market and the side shim zone.
So like Jared said, there's the side shims and the shim market. Really what our job was to do was more organize things, minimize the bottlenecks in the shipping, and try to speed up the shipping process. So some of the shims were unorganized in the wrong bins. Packages could have been broken, so they were just in the wrong location. We tried to reorganize that, speed up the delivery process, and organize it. And because they were disorganized, people were grabbing the wrong shims, shipping the wrong parts. It really was a waste of labor and resources. There could be a return of parts.
So for the next step of the DMAIC process, we went into measure. We wanted to go on the shop floor as well as Inflow, which is team manufacturing's inventory management system. And we wanted to find data that would help us find solutions to our project. So the first thing that we wanted to measure was we wanted to find a way to actually quantify the number of shims and to the according part number. And we found out that on Inflow there are inventory reports where we can actually see the part number for the shim and the according quantity. Next, we wanted to find out where the shims actually went for outbound shipments, and then we wanted to see why the amount of shims were inside the totes that they were in. We discovered that team manufacturing really only has one customer for their shims, and this customer desires their shipments of shims to be in quantities 150. Each package of shims in the side shim zone has 50 shims per package, so the employees at team manufacturing would put about 3 packages of shims per tote, and this would satisfy the customer's needs. Next, we wanted to recognize the customer's shipping schedules so we could understand product placement better. We did so by pulling outbound, inbound, and inventory reports from Inflow. These reports allowed us to create a 3-month period graphs and tables, and on this we were able to find trends for shim demand for the customer. And this is an example of one of the graphs that we created. As you can see, it's for October outbound shim quantities, and on the x-axis you can see the part number, and on the y-axis you can see the resulting quantity of shims for October. And then the fourth thing we measured was we wanted to identify if there was any preset audit process procedures for shims. As you can see in the picture, the last audit was conducted in 2018. So from that, we determined that team manufacturing does not have a set schedule or really set process for auditing shims. And the final thing we wanted to measure and lay out for ourselves to get a better understanding of the project was if team manufacturing had a set process procedure for their pick and pack of shims. This is where they pick the shims from the shelf or container and then put it in the tote to be shipped. we realized that they did not have any documented process procedures, so we created a flow chart, as you can see. And really the first step in their process was obtaining a pick list from the shipping department, and then the employees would walk through the zone to pick the part from the rack or container. This would often lead to lots of confusion because the employees did not fully understand where the part numbers were, so they had to search through the zone until they found the part number, and then they would pick the according quantity and put it in the tote for shipping.
All right, and for Analyze, we're going to go over these 5 problem root causes. We're going to start with the lack of standardized procedures for picking and packing items. And we thought this was important because with no procedure, there was a lot of wrong shims being picked and shipped to wrong places, so we didn't want that to keep occurring because it loses money in the long run. So we identified this by job shadowing, and a big way we identified it is talking to shop floor employees. A lot of them, every time we talked to them, one person would say they did it a certain way, another person would do it a different way. So we realized we needed to have a standardized way of everybody doing it the same. So then, similar to this, they had lack of standardized audit procedures. So this is also important because if you don't audit regularly, you're not going to know a very accurate measurement of inventory. So this causes long problems down the line. And this is identified by noticing the past receipt that Jared just talked about. That receipt from 2018 was the last audit, and also talking to shop floor employees. So shims have been located in incorrect containers and racks, and this is important because wrong shims are getting shipped to the wrong places. So that's pretty self-explanatory there. And this also increases pick time because if you're grabbing the wrong shims, you got to go back and swap it out. So we identified this by just looking at the shims and noticing that wrong packs were in the wrong places. And then also there's no established zone maps, and this is important because it increases pick time and you can't see where things are easily, and you have to go and look for them individually. It makes it a lot more difficult. So we identified this by just talking to shop floor employees too and noticing there just wasn't any maps. And then there's also no current way of predicting future demand for inflow or outflow of shims. So this is important because you can't prepare for how many shims are going to come in or out and adequately prepare your inventory to deal with it. So we identified this by looking at inbound, outbound inventory reports in Excel and noticing that they didn't match up with really the inventory levels. So that also goes back to the auditing, that we realized we needed to audit this to make sure things match up. And we also just observed the current shim zones to notice this was occurring. So next I'm going to pass it off to Jared to talk about improving.
So one of the first things that we implemented for team manufacturing, you can actually change the slide, was we created a documented process procedure for their pick and pack. Since they did not have one previously established, we actually created one and we wrote it down so they can be using it for future employees. And as you can see in the flowchart we created, the first step in the process procedure is the same. They obtain the pick list from the shipping department. Then in the next step, we actually created zone maps for the shims, which we will show later in the presentation. And the employee will use these maps in the shipping department. And from these maps, they'll be able to determine where they need to go in the warehouse to pick the appropriate shims. And then for the third step, we actually added more to it from the previous one, where the employee must verify the specification as well as part number on the pick list before they pick the part, and then they'll pick the according part, put it in the tote, and have it ready for shipping. We also implemented 2 inventory audit procedures, one for the side shim zone, one for the shim market. The top flow chart is for the side shim zone, and in these audit procedures, we created a monthly procedure where the director of supply chain goes out onto the floor and he verifies that the quantities reported in inflow match the quantities that are actually in the bins. We also created a loose shim audit procedure. This is for the side shim zone. As we discussed before, often there was previously lots of spilled packages as well as loose packaging inside the containers that held the shims. This created a problem for pick speed as well as pick accuracy, and we created a 5S audit method for that as well as a monthly audit.
So like we said, some people couldn't find the correct shim, so we created the shim zone map. It's organized by the last 4 of the part number as well as color. On the side of the shim, it's painted color because they look the same almost. So it's organized by color, that way you know which bin it goes in. zone. Now this is the shim market as well. We created a map so you know where the shim is that you're grabbing that's about to be shipped out.
Okay, and for our forecast, we designed a way to predict shim quantities for future months using a 3-period average forecasting approach. So as you can see here, we had the actual quantities from August, September, and October, and we used them to predict November. So you can see our prediction right there. And I chose a 3-period method because we felt there wasn't very much fluctuation with like seasons or anything like that. Everything seemed to stay somewhat similar with the inventory levels. So we decided that this would be the best way and most accurate way to forecast. And these forecasts can be used to consolidate space and prepare for future outbound shims.
So for the final stage of the DMAIC process for control, we wanted to help team manufacturing implement ways to maintain the improvements that we established for them. And the first way is by following the process procedures that we previously talked about. This is for the audit process procedures as well as the pick and pack. By following these, they can help maintain accurate inventory counts as well as establish easier methods for picking. And then if team manufacturing continues to actively forecast outbound and inbound demand of shims, they will be able to better rearrange the racks as well as containers for shims so they can prepare for future demand. And then finally, by constantly updating the zone maps for shims, depending on demand, they'll be able to have employees accurately pick shims as well as speed up the picking process.
All right, and for the conclusion of our project, overall what we did is we created new process procedures, we created zone maps, and we forecasted for shims. And implementing these improvements we feel could better help ClarkLogic to save money in the long run and save time getting outbound shipments ready and just making their inventory more organized. And it can also reduce bottleneck and outbound shipments of shims and prevent pauses in customers' manufacturing processes because if they can't get their parts when they need them, it can cause other people downstream to be affected too, which could cause a lot more issues in the long run. And last, I'm going to show you guys an Excel document of how I did this forecasting real quickly. So you can see here, you can go in this drop-down list and just select any shim you want, and it'll just change the graph for you, and you can very easily predict the forecast for the next months. And this can be, if you see on these slides, it's all the totals for that month. So you can very easily, say you want to predict for March, you can very easily take December through February's, copy and paste them in here, and then this equation would still, if I can click on it, would still work to predict that. And lastly, we'd like to thank ClarkLogic and Shima for this great opportunity we've been given. And I think that wraps up our presentation. Does anybody else have any questions?
Wow.
Was that a good one?
So, oh, even better. Very good on the forecasting model. I really like the forecasting model. That's neat. My question is on the color. So I really like the color that was used for making sure you had the proper locations for the shims. Did you do the project long enough that you could see a reduction in the picking errors to actually state that you've reduced them?
Yeah, not long enough, no.
Okay.
We needed 3 months basically to kind of see how it'll play out in the long run. So what we did do is when we predicted for November, we actually have November's list to see what the actual quantity was, and it was only 2 to 3 packages off, which doesn't really make any difference whatsoever. So we'd say it predicted pretty accurately.
Very good.
Yeah, that was awesome. Great use of DMAIC. Even using 5S model within DMAIC, which was pretty impressive. Your auditing process, are they going to implement that for long term, or is that something that, okay, the project's over and we don't have to worry about this anymore? What's going to happen?
I mean,
It would be interesting to see how those numbers tighten up over a longer period of time. That's cool. Good job.
I was handed this class about 10 years ago, and I wanted to make it very hands-on, like these projects were. And I was told by colleagues at other schools and other supply chain programs, this is very risky territory. We wouldn't recommend it. Typically, you'd want to do this at the graduate level. You don't want to do this with 20-year-olds, most of which are going to go into the projects with almost no previous professional work experience. How do you guys feel about that, me being forewarned by other professors from other universities that they would never try this at the undergraduate level, having gone through it?
I guess I'm hoping those professors watch these videos and see our presentations and see that we are capable of doing these things.
Correct. That's why I asked the question. That's the right answer. I hope they do see this and realize that every program across the country at the undergraduate level should be doing this. We have some advantages like great students, but we're also surrounded by enormous amounts of industry where we can do this with local companies, and we kind of take that for granted that I could hit a golf ball with a baseball bat, an aluminum one, and probably hit 1,000 facilities in the area that could use our help, and that would be good mentors for you. So I agree that all programs should be doing this, and they're not, though. So good for us, and too bad for them, I guess, but they're starting to figure out that they should be, and they are, so. No, when you started throwing up the charts that you made. So with those forecasting tools and techniques and those spreadsheets, I'm assuming you guys are business analytics minors and you've had data analytics classes like CIS 2640. Otherwise, that might have been difficult for you to pull off. Okay.
I've had all those.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? Phenomenal. Great job.
Hello. Is that on? We are Team Data Integrity. My name is Carter Rausch.
My name is Hannah Jessup.
And I'm Peyton Hurley.
So today we will be going through our team, our project summary, our DMAIC formatting, our project conclusions, and then our thoughts and insights. So our governance, we worked through Jared and Greg. They were both very accommodating. We got every question answered right away. They were great to us, very flexible, met with us whenever we needed, and got the job done for us, helping us out so we could achieve our goals. So our project backstory really revolves around not having a warehouse map and items getting placed kind of wherever. There wasn't really any standard procedures going on with the material handlers, and they really needed to see where things are going so things just didn't get placed where they fit. And we were really, for our warehouse map, really reducing error and creating consistency and communication.
So I'm going to start going through the different steps of the DMAIC process. So starting with define, we saw 4 major problem areas that we wanted to work on. Number 1 was communication. Key in this area was we noticed there wasn't a whole lot of communication between the different shifts, and there weren't written SOPs already established for specifically the team warehouse. The SOPs that they did have had unwritten steps as well. Next, we wanted to look at organization, specifically product placement in the warehouse. Were they putting the highest used products in the easiest to reach locations? We wanted to look at the auditing schedule to see if they had a schedule and if they had an SOP already set in place. And then finally, they use inflow for their inventory. We wanted to see how that was working and if they were utilizing it to its fullest potential. So when we were measuring, we went down to the warehouse floor to see how the processes actually happened. With communication, we went down, we talked to the people and the officers that we saw. We talked to the people that were on the floor, and they told us that, that there was a couple people, main people, that they would talk to about problems. If they couldn't find those people, then it was hard to get the problem solved. They didn't really talk to each other between shifts. They weren't seeing a whole lot of tools that they could utilize to do that. Organization, we walked around the warehouse to see how products were placed. We noticed that the warehouse was very full, and we also saw that for several parts, that they would be located in different locations of the warehouse instead of all in the same location. Next, for auditing, we went and talked to the director of supply chains, Sean Pavlovsky, about his auditing process, and he told us there were no set SOPs for auditing and no set schedule. So, and he was the only one that did it, and sometimes zones would get recounted too many times, and then there were some zones that didn't get counted at all. Lastly, we wanted to look into forecasting. Here's where we really delved into inflow. We got access to that pretty early on in the project, and we were able to go through and we found some really useful tools that were not being utilized. So with analyzing, we use the why method to find the root cause of each of these problems. And what it boiled down to with the demand planning was inflow really wasn't being used to its fullest potential. We found a whole report feature that when we talked to the people down in the warehouse, they weren't using. And these reports were everything from inventory reports, customer order history, and such. And then with communication, we found that that boiled down to everyone thought that it wasn't necessarily, that somebody else would communicate the problem, that they didn't have to do that. And there weren't tools there for them to easily communicate with each other. And then auditing and the SOPs, those kind of go hand in hand. There were no written steps in some of the SOPs, which worked well enough because people were there long enough that they knew the process. But if you were a new person just coming in, it was kind of difficult to learn what the process actually is because there was no written documentation.
And I'll be going over the improved part of the DMAIC process. And in this stage, this is where we actually found the solutions and started implementing them at ClarkLogic. And we created written procedures that were followed by all team manufacturing employees. And that way it decreases employee uncertainty, and there's no gray area, and everyone knows where something has to go. And it's just a lot easier for people to follow if they're unaware of how to do the process. And demand planning and forecasting increased efficiency, and along the lines, it just had no gray area. It makes it very set in stone for everyone to follow the process. And the importance of demand planning, that aligns with the inflow and getting everyone on board of using it and making sure that you can utilize all the resources that they had on hand and weren't aware of. And for zone mapping, warehouse organization, that was very important to decreasing load times for the trucks and making sure that everyone was working as efficiently as possible. And this is some pictures of the zones in the warehouse, and you can see there's a lot of very close parts next to each other, and it was very hard to get between. And they all fit there, but it just wasn't easy to go and look around and do audits or see what parts were where and where they were located.
So for our solution, we were given this map originally on our first couple days by Sean, the director of supply chain. He really knew that this, from past experience, that this was the direction he wanted to go with the product placement, but he really didn't have the background information to really push the plan ahead and really stress the idea of this is why we need to do it. He just knew this is what we need to do. So to continue, here is kind of our research analysis, pulling reports out of inflow and taking customer order history and really identifying the different product categories of what's the main usage and what needs to be closest to our in and out. So, and then this is just a small screenshot, just a cleaner picture of kind of really showing the discrepancies of high volume.
And for control, we figured out that there were 5 things that were very easy to manage and keep under control. Was managers check and weekly zone for audits, and that just gets on a more set schedule, and everyone understands where the products are and how much of the product you have. And check in daily that procedures are being followed. That aligns with the SOPs and making sure everyone's following procedure and placing products in the right spot if they were overstocked and not being relocated. Communication with the customer to find out what they need. That also aligns with overestimations and making sure that you're getting the right product on the truck and the customer is 100% satisfied and they're utilizing all the space on the truck when they're loading it. And implement a charge if materials are sent back due to overestimation. That's more just a guideline so the customer is better able to understand what products they need. And every shift checks the whiteboard at the beginning of every shift. That is better for the communication process, so there's no missed products, or if someone had to move a certain zone, like move some products to another location, they would be able to effectively communicate that with other shifts that may not have noticed that or would be unaware of that. Project conclusion. We were tasked with improving the shop floor errors and create solutions for those problems. And that aligned with creating a warehouse map and product placement to be more effective and standardize it so they could better load the trucks with the products. And reaching the final product, our team looked at the current processes and we saw room for improvement. It was a good process already, but it seemed there was a lot more time that could be better spent loading the trucks and placing the products in better locations so you could be more effective in your time. The takeaway, after completing this course, we got amazing hands-on experience. This is the only time I've ever worked for the company and anything related to supply chain, and I got a great look on what it's like and actually working with a team and working on a project that created real results, and I believe we all can agree that it was a very effective process and it was an amazing experience that I'm definitely grateful for. Thoughts and insights to the project. Temporary zone to cut back on random zone placement of parts. This was more or less so if the trucks were overstocked and they sent back some of the product, this would be an easy spot for people to know where a certain product is located. And if you were to load a truck the next day with that same product, you could just grab it from the temporary zone and it would be closer to the trucks and you would be more effectively using your time if you were to get the return product. And they would be able to look at what products are in the temporary zone and understand that you have that extra product on hand.
Then another thought would be utilizing a communication board or a whiteboard where you have your daily, weekly goals, really understanding what is coming today, what is going out, what's high priority, and really just making sure that even implementing shift meetings where you have a supervisor really drilling down and holding accountability within employees.
And then lastly, really digging into inflow and using the reports that they will automatically generate for you just to make sure that your inventory counts are accurate and actually keeping up on an auditing schedule so that you know what you have in your warehouse and where it is.
And that concludes our presentation. Any questions?
Just walking straight over here.
Compliment first, right? So I think there was a pivot table, right? Was that a pivot table? Yeah, I think that's super important. So it's really good. Data analytics group as well. Yeah, I think that's really good because that helps show and point to data and show you the direction you need to go to make a change. When it comes to the inventory, you talked a lot about forecasting inventory and having too much inventory. Did you have any discussion with the team or with the leadership team at ClarkLogic at what that costs with respect to money and the cash that might be tied up with all of that extra inventory that is on hand that you're not going to use because you can't find it? Yeah.
So the interesting thing with these last couple here is the programs are tied to a manufacturer. We're receiving their inbound shipments and doing JIT for them. So we really have no way of understanding what that inventory level is ever going to look like or how fast it could move out of our warehouse. If we're receiving a part number and on a Tuesday and 2 weeks later we receive additional parts and nothing's moved from the first time, so then stuff gets rearranged in multiple zones, etc. So it's a hard problem to try and tackle, to say the least, because we don't have any control over how we receive anything or how it's even packaged. Going back to the Shims, you know, having that have paper packages, that'd be such a simple change. So, you know, to react and to be able to put processes in places and adapt to the customer at the end of the day is the best that we can really do on our side.
You three aren't graduating anytime soon, right?
2021.
Okay. A question we have within the program often amongst the faculty is not if we should have this class, but where to position the class. Should it be at the beginning of the curriculum, in the middle, or towards the end? How did the timing of this class and this project work out for you? Would you have wished it happened at a different time, or did it seem appropriate?
I feel like if around sophomore and junior year would probably be more ideal. This year, because I believe most of us are all juniors, correct? Yeah. And just because sophomores, if you land an internship or have experience like this as a sophomore, I feel like that's very vital to gaining interest of employers in the area and making you stand out from other people in the major. When you're a junior, a lot of employers already expect you to have a lot of hands-on experience, which is very difficult to get if they don't really give you the chance to get hands-on experience. So this is a great stepping stone for people that would potentially be in that situation as a sophomore.
Okay, so in general, maybe just a little sooner?
Yeah, a little sooner. I believe that really giving the younger students a chance to take a step out there, gain the experience, really sets them apart, and it gives all of us students a better chance for ourselves and really to show companies what we can achieve.
Okay, we just have to be a little careful as a program to not give employers very, very young students.
Right.
For example, if you haven't taken the CIS 2640 class and you don't know how to do a pivot on an Excel spreadsheet. So it's a little bit of give and take, but okay, the consensus maybe just a little sooner than when it happened.
Right.
Okay.
I think it would be cool to really see a mix of maybe have more older students and then bring some younger students on to kind of fill the pipeline and really build them up so they're ready for that.
Right. Managers tell us they love our seasoned students that have already had 2 or 3 internships under their belt, but then those students maybe don't get as much from the experience because they already have 2 or 3 internships under their belt and they're getting ready to graduate and they're focusing on the job market versus working on a project with a local company. So it's hard, but I think we're really, really close to where it needs to be. And in general, that's probably the case. Like you don't feel it was like a really, really bad timing. Okay.
I know for me as well, you know, teaching teaches me at the same time. So when I have to break it down to the most lamest terms possible and really try to provide you with a good understanding of the subject matter, I'm at the same time having to reinforce myself at that time and I maybe even understand it a little bit better because I had to explain it in such a different way to somebody who's a novice. So I think there's always that.
I'll use this. So Carter and Jared for sure, I know, and Hannah, I believe. Hannah, did you do externship program? No, I have not. You did not? Okay. So I'm wondering, for those of you that did do the externship, I mean, I'm sorry if I forget, you go out and you experience this thing, say your freshman year, and then the follow-up to like a sophomore experience comes with something like this and the timing. I wonder, from your perspective, would it be, I don't know, advantageous if, say, there was an externship set up for a student in their freshman year, they go out, they have the, you know, not the hands-on, but you know what an externship is. You go out there, you do the experience, you see what it's like, and then that follow-up year, you're going back to the same employer for a project program like this?
I think that would be a great opportunity, especially having a little bit of experience before, and then really thinking you're able to digest that information and then really hit on it that following year.
Right, because you're really cutting out the orientation time of what this project would be,
Right.
essentially, because you've already gone through that process.
Right, and there'd be a little bit of a review with that, but like you said, you can jump right into it, and really, you already have an overview of the company, so you can start.
Cool, just a thought.
It's a great thought because our business externship program is basically a job shadowing experience. So for companies like Flowserve and Clark Logic, if we could coordinate with those two companies since they're here, then we could transition into projects that we do with these companies. You're right, we're one step ahead already. Yeah, for our audience, you might want to explain what a business externship is.
Externship program is one to
Why is that?
Off topic, but what we're finding from your program. Find information, make this problems, which is a bigger issue.
Good job, everyone. This is awesome.
Thanks for coming, Bob. I think we're ready for the next one. Sound good? Oh, Connor, yeah. Yeah, we're integrated into another one where, in essence, is a two-part course. Right, right. No, it. Love it. Phenomenal feedback. Yeah, Jared. Good stuff. Your suggestions are going to make it a little more difficult coordination-wise, but it's not insurmountable. It's like this phenomenal feedback because I've been doing this for 10 years. You get kind of in a rut and stuck in a system. You're like, you make small improvements and tweaks. These are major ones that you're recommending, but not insurmountable. Like, it makes sense, so we'll do it. We'll do it. Good job, guys. Yeah, thank you. One more to go, right? You guys want the mic? Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony,
I'm Brandon.
and we had the pleasure to work with the J&L Express service, and we worked on trailer tracking. This is a little bit of our agenda for our presentation. We're going to go over our team, our project backstory. We're going to go through the DMAIC process, project conclusion, final photos. Fleetilla, we're going to do a little demonstration of our software that we're transforming into Fleetilla. A couple SO standard operating procedures and thoughts and insights of this project. This is our team. Greg was our corporate champion, and Jared was more of our project manager, and that's our group. And they really helped us out a lot through this project. Yeah, this is us next to the J&L Express trailer. But yeah, Greg and Jared helped us out big time. Any questions we had, they really made it easier for us to transform into the professional world. Are more of like hands-on experiences. They made it a lot easier for us. This is a little bit of the project backstory. Clark Logic, J&L Express, Clark Logic has been kind of struggling a little bit with tracking their 3,000 trailers, around 3,000 trailers that they have. About 516 actually have tracking devices on them. So being able to have a little bit more trackers on these trailers will help more with transparency of where these trailers are at, and you'll be able to build these customers who have these trailers accordingly, because they could take advantage of this process and hold on to these trailers however long they want. And J&L is extremely important to Clark Logic because it provides a wide range of flexible, efficient, and affordable transportation solutions that ensure successful long-term relationships with their customers. This is the define stage of the DMAIC process. This is kind of where we figured out the overall issue of they use LoadTrack as their main software, and we saw that Fleetilla we could use a lot more utilization in Fleetilla. There's a lot more flexibility, a lot more things you could do in there that just make it easier to track your trailers and organize all your data. And so it is, with the solution that we came up with, was just basically switch over to Fleetilla, and we scheduled a meeting with Fleetilla, and we had a webinar of kind of showing us how to use their software to their full capability. So we first measured the task involved with LoadTrack and what information was needed to transform over to Fleetilla. We also created geofences for these locations, for the customer locations of where these trailers are going into. We also measured the amount of trailers that are missing or lost and the last known location of these trailers. We did this in hopes of being able to track down the assets later, or being able to contact these customers, and we were able to build them accordingly. We also created Excel files of kind of separating the road versus storage trailers, so it was easier to implement into Fleetilla. And we also created geofence locations to transfer the information from LoadTrack into Fleetilla.
All right, so after the measurement stage, we fully understand the scope of the project, and we were able to move into the analysis phase. We understood what geofencing was and how and when to use it. And after closely looking at the assets, we measured out the steps necessary to go about these tasks, and then created procedures necessary to complete them. This allowed for new hires and also internal employees to have full transparency and complete confidence in the tasks that they were completing. And it's also reduced human error in the processes. And after we measured out the missing assets, we collected the data and compiled it together of all the trailers that were missing and in preparation for the implementation stage. And then finally, to eliminate yard checks, we analyzed the truck driver audit process and figured out why that wasn't being completed. And we determined it was based on the electronic logging device accountability, which means that the drivers were not entering the information into their computers in their trucks. Also, they were not identifying whether the trailers were empty or full. And finally, ultimately, the goal is to get trackers on all of the trailers so that we know where they are. So then moving on into the improvement stage, this is when we physically went out and carried out the tasks that we explained. We created the procedures for the individual processes necessary, like how to geofence and how to update customer information. We updated and geofenced the new customers as well as the existing customers in Fleetilla. And we grouped trailers into storage and road categories. We went out and did yard checks on where the last known asset location was to try and find these lost trailers. So for that, we went to Graphic Packaging, which is a company on the north side of Kalamazoo, and did an audit. According to LoadTrek, there was 13 trailers there, and after our audit, we found about 35. So that's 22 trailers that were unaccounted for. So that just shows why it's so important for these drivers to fill out these driver forms when they drop off the trailers, just so that ClarkLogic knows where their assets are. And then finally, we created a new process procedure on drivers completing the audit process, which, like I was explaining, is crucial for dispatch to run the operation.
Right, so for, I had the control side of the DMAIC process, and for control, it's important to control the changes made to prevent this from happening again. So what is being done so these problems don't occur again? Had SOPs for driver dropping trailers, repercussions such as getting written up if they aren't filling out these driver entry forms correctly. And then we transitioned into report automation, which is eliminating human error. So then we are getting these reports automated from Fleetilla. And then ultimately, like Ryan said, is getting tractors being installed on all these trailers. New processes will prevent the need for manual yard checks, which will be ran by Fleetilla, and we'll be doing a demonstration on that shortly. And then these controls will help J&L Express in the long run by knowing where their assets are at all time and knowing how long their assets have been sitting for effectively charge companies fees. And so for our project conclusion, throughout the duration of this project, there were many small tasks that had to be done in order to reach our end goal. Those tasks include getting to know both software systems. So we wanted to get full utilization of one, which we happened to decide Fleetilla. And so our first initial yard check at GPI, as Ryan said, and gathering data of which trailers were storage versus road, and then transferred those into Excel files and then shipped them off to Fleetilla to fully get that integrated into Fleetilla. And then trailer tracking down to each location. So as you can enter in a trailer number in Fleetilla, you'll get that exact location of where it is located once it pings each day. And so this DMAIC process impact on J&L Express, continuous improvement of asset management, which then creates transparency and which is an efficient solution. So right here is a couple photos. So this is a manual yard check done at the Milham site. So right here on the left-hand side, we have the trailer numbers. And then if it's a storage or road in the middle. And on this right-hand side, it has back row, front row. That really doesn't really define of where the trailer is actually at that lot. So if Ryan was to go in and work for ClarkLogic on Monday, and he was to look at this, what does that mean? What does back row, front row mean? So then we wanted to just eliminate that, get rid of it, not even have it. So then right here on this right-hand side on the top is our Excel file for Flotilla to update our geofence locations. On the left-hand side, so once we exported this from our data, it all, can you go back? It actually was all combined. And since we're all analytics minors, we did text manipulation and divide that all up to get the company address and city all separate. And then right here is our storage versus road snippet of our spreadsheet. So then had to do text manipulation as well on that one and separated it and sent that out to Flotilla. So here is a dashboard alert system in Flotilla. And obviously we want to pay attention to the not moved for technically all of them, but we want to be focusing on the 7 to 14 days all the way through the 60 or more days to bill accordingly, but that means that our assets are not moving. So now we are going to move into the Flotilla demonstration. If you pull that up. Yeah, I have it up right now. So right now I'm going to do a SOP for a report.
Close out of PowerPoint.
So, we're good. Oh. All right, so here we go. This is our Flotilla right here, homepage. As soon as we log in, it has our alert system right here telling if they've not moved or not. And so we go into this reports, go to reports tab, run reports. It wants to. All right, so now we want to check our daily yard check by site. And we want to highlight days sitting over, we'll do 7. And then all we're going to do, generate. So as this one is processing, I'm just going to pull up the one that I ran earlier in this spreadsheet here and go here. So as a little audit system, I picked out 2 trailers located at ClarkLogic and Right Coding. So if this works out, we'll be able to see it here in this report and on a actual live tracking map within Flotilla. So let's check it out real quick. So ClarkLogic, do our ClarkLogic one, Command F. We're going to do K53124. Find. And it did, in fact, tell us that this trailer is located at ClarkLogic in row 67. You can tell that road trailer at ClarkLogic. And it told us today at 1:12 p.m. That's where it was. And how many days it's been sitting? 0. Very good. And if we want to double check that, we'll go to right coding. We'll just check this one on the map, and it will be right here. Right coding 538745. I'm doing the right coding one. So this one tells us this trailer is indeed at right coding. We can click on it. Go into this map, zoom in, and this is the actual building for Right Coding. And so now we are going to head back to here. Right, so for final thoughts on insights of this project, there's no other student in any other undergrad program doing this kind of exposure that we are. And this is, again, another reason why we are in the top 10 nationally in supply chain. And it brings fresh eyes in on a project that some of these guys at ClarkLogic didn't see before. And so we brought fresh eyes on this. And teamwork makes the dream work. Honestly, it's cliche to say, but no, working with these 2 guys every day, Jared, Greg, thank you so much for helping us out on this project. And this opportunity has been nothing but great for us. So that is the conclusion of our project. Open this up to questions.
That was cool. What's the market value of a trailer? I don't even know. Ballpark. And at the start of your project, you were saying there were 2,500 out there that were technically unaccounted for?
Correct.
They're just, you don't know where they're at. Like,
There's,
right, I'm not saying that they're not stolen. I just, if you had to pinpoint it. Okay, yeah.
I misspoke. There's 2,500 that don't have trackers, which makes it harder to
Okay,
keep track of
gotcha,
them.
gotcha, okay.
Correct, yeah, there's Dallas.
Yep. Gotcha. This is a major asset that you want to manage. Right, right, okay. Just bringing it right over here. Thank goodness you came.
I mean, this is super neat, right? Super neat, impressive. So the question I have is about Flotilla. So was that a selection that was pre-made before, or did you guys actually come up with Flotilla?
No, they had a lot of information kind of already in there. But
Yeah,
they,
okay.
They solely used load track, and we saw that Flotilla had a lot more, we should definitely switch over to that. A lot more, lot more benefits that I think it would.
And then I was just a little confused. So when you did the text edit and got the information, were you getting that off of the items that were on the left of the screen, which were just handwritten notes that you were scanning and pulling that in, or did you actually have a download and then manipulate that download to get that into Flotilla?
Right, so all of that data was in an external data source called collective data, and then we had to run it, export that into, and it just was raw data, and it was just all combined, and then using our text manipulation skills, we separated all of that, and then we sent those Excel files over to the Flotilla software management program, and then they integrated that and then updated the system on our end. So it happened like that.
So it eliminates the manual yard check. You could do it all through the software. It could even ping if it goes in the console, like customer location, and we could upload it to an Excel file and make it as set as a daily yard check. And it could update every single day without even touching anything.
Next, you'll tell me I'll send automated reports if your trailer gets stolen, right, and it's off track, then you get an automatic email. Yeah. Very good. Excellent. Great job. Oh.
The question I have is, so what kind of education did you have to do with the drivers then? Or are they not involved in any of the data collection or?
So on this side, we actually had very little interaction with the drivers because they're not at the headquarters every single day. They're out driving, doing their drop-offs and stuff like that. That's when we conducted the driver audits through LoadTrack on seeing if they were actually entering in their driver entries or not. Then that was just kind of, we took the basis of they're not doing this. This is a problem. We kind of want to break away from it. So that's why we decided to go to Flotilla.
So you have to rely on the drivers to actually input the data into the machine. So is there any educational training for them to make sure that that's done? And okay. So once those trailers cycle back through, is your goal then to just get all of those trackers put on the trailers so that this whole process becomes a loophole and it just runs continuously?
Yeah, that's definitely the looking forward. It's just for the physical trailer itself.
There's some trailers that are.
The physical trailer itself.
Any other questions?
Final comments, final comments, this is super impressed with the team, impressed with Curkovic, right? So you guys. All really good because. Jared, obviously, this is great for you. You got to lead a team as being, still being. Yeah, so I mean, you got to lead multiple teams. I think that's overall, I'm just super.
I've wanted to do something like this for a very long time, but companies are reluctant to get in one room like this and talk about, well, what are the things that we're not doing well that we need help with? I wanted to get different companies together in the same room, the same company with multiple projects in the same room at the same time to do something like this, but they're a little insecure about that for obvious reasons, and Curkovic wasn't whatsoever. They're very comfortable with themselves and in their own skin, yeah.
What really helped is this is a company. Closer to the finish line.
Yeah.
3 months is really hard to put all that together.
Well, I hope there are prospective students out there watching this and they see this and they are starting to think about where they should go to school. And I think if they watch this, they'll think, where could they go and get a better education? And I don't know if there's another program out there that could have given you guys a better education. And I think you guys would admit that as Broncos. And hopefully if companies see this, and we have some here today, they'll ask questions like, how can we get involved and do similar things? Because we've seen it's win-win-win. So thank you. It's time to call it a day and end the semester for you guys. And I look forward to changing your grades as soon as I get to my office, because right now it says incomplete, right? And I'll go change that in about 10 minutes. And enjoy your A's. It'll do nothing but inflate your GPAs because you guys did everything that you were asked to do.
I just want to say a few more things. That these projects were special, not only me, but for the students as well. These students were able to deep dive into a company and use applied knowledge to use different techniques and analytical skills to be able to come up with creative solutions for these type of problems. We could do a lot of this stuff in-house, but it's nice to see, have different eyes and different experiences, different backgrounds, and throw that all together in one room and have very diverse and creative solutions to these type of problems. These type of problems could be solved X amount of ways, but it's very nice to have Western students like myself to be able to say, hey, this is the best way to do it, and have people like Delon and Jamie Clark sitting there listening to type of ideas that us students have to be able to come up with these creative solutions for these type of problems as well. And then lastly, I would just like to give my gratitude. I'm extremely, extremely thankful for the type of opportunities that I've been presented, not only from Western and Dr. Shima, but Greg and Jamie themselves. They definitely saw something in me. They saw potential in me and were able to give me a chance and let me prove myself to say, hey, I'm an evolving professional, and they were there helping me as stepping stones to be able to mold me into evolving professional that I am today. And then lastly, we're looking forward to continuing these projects on to next semester. It'll bring new challenges and different types of students and backgrounds. And Clark Logic, myself and Greg, we will be there in open arms to encourage all these type of differences, all these type of different educational backgrounds, be able to push them all into one or several projects and be able to do this all over again. Again, I am more than grateful to be able to have these type of opportunities and do this type of project management and be able to evolve and grow as a professional as well, as I'm nearing towards the end of my educational career as well. So this type of experience to be able to manage 4 different type of groups was very, very beneficial on my end before I graduate and going out into the real world, to have this in my experience and being able to move forward and use this as a stepping stone to be able to mold what I'm going to be doing in the future. So